righty. All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar where we'll be reviewing the Handshake product roadmap. We've got so many exciting updates to share with you, and we're going to be jumping into those. We've got a mix of slides and actually live demos that we're should try and get through today. But before we jump in, we want to introduce our hosts with a couple introductions. So for those of you that I haven't met, my name is David Shaw. I've been here in the UK for about 3 years now, launching Handshake. I've actually been with Handshake for just over 7 years and worn lots of different hats at the organization. And the topic today is something that's near and dear to my heart. I love all things product related. I think that the technology that our teams are able to build really can have a transformative impact on students, on the relationships that universities are able to build with employers. And so it's always kind of a fun opportunity to share a glimpse of the future in these types of webinars. But I am joined today by my absolutely amazing colleague, Claire Adams. And Claire, do you want to do a quick intro?
Yeah, it's a great intro. I don't know if I need to say anything else. Thanks. For those of you who haven't met, my name is Claire Adams. I'm head of university success here at Handshake UK. I joined Handshake nearly 2 years ago, which has absolutely flown by. I was the first employee hired in the UK, and prior to joining Handshake, spent just over a decade in higher education and FE, working in careers, but also student engagement with a particular focus on diversity, equality, and inclusion. Bit like David, I love these kinds of webinars. I love seeing the new features that we've launched and the new tools that are going to be available to all of our university partners, our students and employers that we work with. I get particularly excited because it's also my team that then works with all of our university partners to make sure that you can maximize those tools to get the most value for your stakeholders. So we're looking forward to sharing the roadmap and what's been recently released with you.
And with that, let's go ahead and jump in. But before we jump into the content, we do want to make sure that there's plenty of opportunity for people to ask questions. So in Zoom, if you're not familiar with Zoom webinar, there's that Q&A section. That's the best place to ask us questions. If you can go ahead and just drop them in there. We'll kind of keep an eye on those as we go through the webinar, but we're also hoping to have some time near the end for kind of open Q&A where we'll try and get through those. We do have a packed agenda, so if we don't get to all the questions, we'll be following up with you individually, and we're happy to dig into those as well. So again, keep the questions in the Q&A section if you can. That's the best place, so we can kind of keep track of those and follow up with them after. If you want to just kind of add some running commentary on the webinar, the chat is a good place for that. The reason we ask you to put questions in the actual Q&A section is that the chat basically gets lost after we close the webinar. So it's much easier for us to follow up and kind of make sure we answer your question if you put them there. Our agenda, as promised, action-packed. We're going to go through a quick overview of just the growth that Handshake's had over the past year in the UK. We're going to jump right into a new feature called Handshake Journeys and actually give you a live demo of our award management platform that we're calling Journeys. We're going to preview a new feature called virtual appointments and talk about some of the future that we're investing in around relationships and how we think that these systems are really transitioning from what may have been historically kind of more transactional experiences, apply for a job, search for an event, those types of things, into really building out a relationship platform that helps universities broker connections between their teams and students, students and employers, employers and the university, really thinking about relationships as the core of this type of platform. We'll then wrap up with a quick overview of some trust and safety updates that we're really excited about to continue to invest in making Handshake the safest place for your students to launch their career. We've got a whole smattering of other updates. Believe it or not, we have so many kind of updates and improvements and innovations that are coming out that we won't even be able to cover all of them in this webinar, but we'll try to highlight a few others there that should be on your radar before we open it up for Q&A. So with that, we'll jump into a quick overview of Handshake's growth. We launched for the first kind of set of partner universities. We have some of them on the call, so hello to you. We launched in May of 2020 with our first set of institutions. Since then, it has been just incredible to watch how quickly the team has grown. And I think what I'm even more proud of is the impact that Handshake has been able to have at these campuses for these students. Over the past year, we've doubled the number of partners on the network. So we're really proud of the kind of continued growth. And I think that's a testament to the impact that our early partners have seen. We've 3x the UK team. This week in particular has been exciting. We've added a pretty meaningful number. And this next couple months, we're continuing to grow the team on the ground. Compared to this time in 2020, we've had a 300% increase in the UK specific team. When you start to look at the experience that students are having on the network, one of the things that we talk a lot about is democratizing opportunity. How do we actually restructure the university recruitment process to be more equitable? And this stat, I think, really shows how quickly Handshake is starting to restructure the way that university recruitment is done in the UK, with about 2/3 of students having received a personalized message from an employer. And you can see some of the quotes from students here just bringing to life the impact that that has on their confidence, on helping drive action and engagement. It's really been powerful to see the impact. And Handshake continues to be, we think, the best long-term and sustainable choice when it comes to investing in the region, investing in the sector, investing in the technology they're going to see here. And we're proud to have continued to see the kind of funding and the access to resources that we have to invest in your teams continue with an exciting round of funding that we announced a few months ago. I think beyond just the funding, it's the impact that that's been able to have through things like the Early Career Recovery Fund, the Careers 2030 Professional Development Bootcamp we hosted here in the UK. So it's just been, I think, a real privilege to be a partner with the space. One of the things that we've really been focused on in that spirit of being a local partner here in the UK is building out a award tool. So one of the things that when I first moved over to the UK, I started to learn about was these award programs that universities are kind of managing, and really kind of creating these structures and processes for students to be able to move through and grow and develop in their career in a bit more of a structured way that's then reportable and tracked from a university perspective. And one of the things that we had heard is we did lots and lots of feedback sessions. And for those of you that are on the call that were really partners and helping us understand this problem, we knew that these were incredibly impactful programs for the students that went through them. But from a university perspective, they could be challenging to scale, challenging to manage, especially if you had a large volume of students coming through there. And so when we started building journeys, we knew we wanted to approach this in a bit of a unique way. So the way that you can think about journeys is as a flexible tool. It's designed for award programs, but really any type of program or initiative that you want to kind of provide a structured process for students to walk through, you can use journeys for that. They are made up of SMART goals. We'll actually show what this looks like here in just a second, but essentially this automatically connects other activity happening within the Handshake ecosystem into the Journeys platform. So if a student swipes in for an in-person event, it can automatically indicate that they've moved forward in their journey, for example. So it's really neat how these connections happen, and they can save a ton of time and manually recording that. So we call those SMART goals. We also have SMART qualifications. So being able to say students for a particular maybe degree or maybe academic program or from a particular background are able to access different types of journeys. You can even start to stack journeys by saying, once you've completed one, we're going to unlock the next journey. So really flexible and intelligent ways to actually start to integrate and tie these things together. And finally, as you'll see, it's really easy to configure. We heard horror stories of it taking months and months and months to set up an award program and some of these other systems. We wanted to make this easy. And so we're actually going to show this to you very quickly here with a live demo. We're going to be trying to move through this pretty quickly. So if you do want a deeper dive, please reach out. We'll kind of take you through the tool in depth. But if we pop over here to a demo site very quickly, for those of you that maybe aren't as familiar with Handshake, this is the administrative view. We are going to be using a demo environment through the demos today. And the great thing about that is that it's all fake, randomly generated data. The bad news is that that fake randomly generated data was written by our wonderful engineers in the US, which means you still see a few Americanisms dotted in and out of the kind of demo environment here. You're not going to see those in the same way in the UK system. So without further ado, over on the left-hand side, we have this Journeys tab. I'm excited to say that if you are a current partner on the call today, this Journeys tab, if it hasn't shown up already for you, will be showing up very soon in your system. So this is something that's going to be live here any moment. And I've actually built out a draft journey here that we can actually start to use. And I've called this the Handshake Gold Award. We'll go ahead and click in on that. And you'll actually be able to see, if we click on setup here, the process of building out a journey. So we can add the details, the description. We can actually start to qualify which students are eligible for this journey using this whole suite of different qualifications. And then when we click on next, we can actually start to architect these different SMART goals. And you'll notice that I've added a couple of different goals. In this case, we want the student to attend at least one event. We want them to fill out their Handshake profile. We want them to complete at least one appointment of a particular type so that they're coming in and they're engaging with our advising team, and that they're actually going to indicate that they've completed this resource. But I'm going to add one more goal here, which is going to go ahead and I'll add this. I'm going to add this as a student completed goal, which is one that students can just indicate that they've done themselves. We'll click on add goal and we'll say it's attend the Handshake Back to University product webinar. Find it here and we'll go ahead and add the URL. Once we've done that, we can have the kind of different details in the description. We'll add a quick description. make sure you're in the know. It's always hard to type on a demo, in the know about the upcoming features. And just like that, we've now added the SMART goal. We can add that, click on goal, and we'll go ahead and say this is now looking pretty good. So we'll go ahead and review this. We can get a quick preview on exactly what students are going to see as they go through this journey. We'll go ahead and publish that. So that journey has now been published for students. What I'll do very quickly is just switch over now to the student experience in Handshake. We'll go ahead and switch views here by clicking our switch to student account. And now we're brought to the Handshake student dashboard. Now we'll be talking about this a little bit later. You'll notice a refresh here. It's looking quite clean and nice and actually quite directive. But under the Career Center tab, which we can click in right here, we'll now notice a brand new journey section. And so this is where we have the career journeys. And as a U student, I can click in on this and see those journeys that my university have built out. Here's that Handshake Gold Award. So we'll go ahead and click in on that. You see how quickly that loads. This is fast, responsive. And I'll go ahead and activate that as a student. This seems like something I want to do. And I can now actually start to review this. And we'll go ahead and track some of this progress as we go through the other demos. You'll notice that I've built in links. It's easy, it's clean, it's intuitive. And as a student, I can really quickly track my progress as I move through these different elements. So that's a sneak peek at journeys. We're going to be launching that across the entire network here this week. Claire and the team will be in touch with more details for our current partners. And as with all things with Handshake, it's not modular, it's not an extra feature. It's included as part of the package and it's integrated with everything else within the system. We are so proud of this feature, and the engineering and product teams in the US deserve a huge shout out for building this. It's, I think, really going to be a game changer when it comes to helping administer these programs. But I also want to just shout out the early partners that helped us beta test this, that provided feedback, that worked with us to understand how they could architect their programs here. So thank you for those of you that were involved in that. We really appreciate it. And now I get to take a break from talking and hand it over to the wonderful Claire to talk about another new innovation.
Thank you, David. And just to confirm, journeys will actually be going live in the UK product at 3:30 this afternoon, I believe, maybe 4 o'clock, depending on if I've got my timings right. So you will start to see that in product this afternoon. Bit of a drum roll, I think, possibly for this one. I'm not going to do it because I have tried to do a drum roll before through Zoom and it doesn't work, but I'm going to do a virtual drum roll. So earlier this summer, we actually launched virtual appointments, which is fully embedded Handshake video in product. We know that virtual is here to stay, and we know that career service teams continue to really be at the forefront of providing career education and guidance to students in the most accessible ways possible, really. Virtual Handshake video appointments allow career service teams to reach out to students who may prefer to, attend an appointment virtually in a format that's more convenient to them through the Handshake platform itself. So we are really thrilled to have rolled this update out, especially given how many university partners I know that I worked with last summer when it came to virtual fairs, or last autumn, I should say, when it came to virtual fairs, who really actually enjoyed using the virtual fair experience when interacting with students. So essentially that whole same experience is now coming to you to appointments. It's completely free for partners to utilize, and will very soon launch iOS and Android support for this feature as well, so that students can not only join from their desktop or their laptop, but from their mobile as well, which we know is obviously hugely important when it comes to all things inclusivity, when it comes to sort of accessing university services. So extremely excited about virtual appointments. And I know many of our partners are already starting to utilize this, pretty jumped on it straight away as soon as it went live. So very excited to see how that comes to life over the next couple of months. For those of you that haven't yet, who are an existing partner, if you want to, as an advisor, you can just go to your mediums, appointment mediums, and add virtual on Handshake as a new medium to your offering. We have created a really easy setup guide that you can work your way through. And we've also created a Handshake Academy course that walks you through how to use Handshake virtual appointments. David is going to do a very quick demo of this for you with his excellent demoing skills. But in the meantime, I'm going to pop in chat links to the setup guide and the Academy course for those of you that may want to follow up after today.
Fantastic. Thanks, Claire. So we're going to do, like we said, a very quick demo of this. We're only going to show this from the student side, but just want to bring to life a little bit how this virtual appointment actually works. So in Handshake, back on the main dashboard here, again, I can go to that Career Center tab where I can access these different resources that are made available. And under the appointments, this is where we can actually start to schedule and book a time with an advisor. So if we go ahead and we click on schedule a new appointment up in the top left as a student, I can start to see the different categories of appointments that my university have built out. Now, these are all customizable. You define the categories that make sense for you. If you're a current partner, your list looks different almost certainly than this, but we can go ahead and we can click in this case on virtual quick queries. Now, maybe I just want to have a quick virtual chat with somebody. Again, these are customizable appointment types. So you define the appointment types that are available, but I'll say that we want to have a virtual quick career planning session. And right away, it's going to bring up the next available time slots. So I'll go ahead and pick on this next top at 1:20. And I'm going to say we want to connect virtually on Handshake. And maybe they have a few questions about interview prep. This is going to be a customizable. You can add other questions that you'd like here. We do ask that at least for context. So you as an advisor know a little bit about what that student may want to connect on. And I can go ahead and click on request. Now in Handshake, we have the ability to either auto approve appointments or have them manually reviewed. That's a setting that you can decide on. In this case, we've set this appointment up to auto approve based on advisor availability. It's also worth probably drawing attention to the fact that you can define how far in advance students book an appointment so that they aren't actually booking 2 minutes before the appointment starts. But for the sake of the demo here, we'll assume that that is possible. And you'll notice because this is approved and the appointment is happening within the next 5 minutes, we have this join video appointment button. And so as a student, I can go ahead and launch right into this video session. You as an advisor will have the same type of thing on your video as well. You can see there's me, hello. And we can now join this session just by launching into that. From here, we now have the ability to wait for the host. We'll get a notification there. We'll be able to chat with the advisor. We can even start to do things like share screen once they've arrived as well. So this is seamless. You're not messing around with different links. You're not doing anything like that. It's also going to automatically track attendance and engagement. Bringing that same type of video magic that we brought to virtual career fairs within the ecosystem here from an advising perspective. So like Claire said, we're really excited about how this makes it much more streamlined to create these virtual connections. There's also a lot behind the scenes here around how this integrates with advisors' calendars and how easy it is for you to actually manage and report on this. And again, happy to share more details about that in a deeper dive demo. So that's virtual appointments. Again, really excited about that kind of coming to life and the impact that that's already having. Claire, back over to you.
Thank you. So we talked at the beginning of the presentation that really we're very much focused on relationships and allowing students to connect, not just with the service, with employers and with other students across the kind of platform. So virtual appointments is just one way that we are supporting students, employers and universities to build those relationships and connections that are, you know, a crucial part of everyone's individual career journey, but also the work that, you know, every careers team here today probably is involved in daily. So across Handshake, we're building kind of new ways for universities, employers and students to get connected because we know that, you know, connections really matter to individuals and to teams. And one of the ways that we're doing this, and I wanted to give you a little sneak peek of something that we're building at the moment, we'll be launching later in autumn, is virtual info chat. So this is a new way for students to connect with employers using the same kind of technology that you're seeing through the appointments features and virtual career fairs as well. So virtual info chats are essentially 15-minute one-to-one sessions hosted through Handshake that a student can schedule with an employer. They were really born out of students' desire to connect with employers earlier on in their recruitment process and outside of just a virtual fair event in a more informal setting to really get an inside look into what company culture might be like, or what kind of available opportunities that employer might have. They'll also give employers, a really unique opportunity to personalize their approach to recruiting, allow them to sort of, potentially bring ambassadors forward or recruiters forward that students might want to connect with and really make a lasting impression on potential applicants. And because of that, because we believe that those connections are so important, this feature will be available to all employers, core and premium. So whether you're using the network entirely for free, or if you're one of our premium partners, they will all have access to this feature, and they'll be able to really share availability through messages, and then the student will be able to book into those slots, much like you see in the virtual fair functionality. So we're really excited to see this come to life later on in the autumn. After this initial release is launched, employers will also be able to sort of almost link virtual info chats to a particular job posting. So we're creating ways for students to connect with employers around particular opportunities as well, like encouraging them to take action, which we're really excited about. We'll share information later on in the coming months as to when this goes live through the product newsletter. But the other thing that's extremely exciting, I think, about this is that we'll be able to share that information on connections back with you, with your teams, which students are proactively reaching out to employers, or which employers are proactively reaching out to your students, and forming those connections through Handshake. So really excited to bring that data to you and your teams. I think that's going to be really exciting. Beyond that, as we continue to invest in new ways for students to build connections and enhance existing opportunities, we really want to continue to encourage students to take action. We believe that being active in the platform, being proactive is the way that they really get the most value from Handshake. So because of that, our mobile home screen is getting a bit of a refresh with a bit of a slightly more action-orientated design. The updated homepage interface is rolling out to iOS, and it'll be coming to Android very soon. So keep an eye on that. I know a few of you have got the app downloaded for your student accounts. And this new interface really puts an emphasis on relationship building and connecting with employers and job postings. So really excited to see how that kind of drives student behavior through the app. And you'll later on in the autumn, you'll also start to see, once virtual info chats is launched, you'll start to see that feature through the app as well. Moving on from that, the pivot to virtual that we all did last year saw Handshake invest heavily in virtual in lots of different ways for our university partners, our students and employers that we work with. And we're continuing to invest in virtual. Hopefully you can see that through the last few slides. And we're going to continue to do so over the coming months as well. We all know that universities are exploring kind of hybrid models of delivery. Virtual is here to stay. It's easier for employers. It's easier for students in lots of ways to connect. And so we really want to support you in delivering that hybrid service delivery model. And we also hear from students as well that this virtual experience is actually hugely beneficial to them. They feel more prepared, they can manage their time more effectively, and they can balance those busy schedules that we all kind of know that they're going through at the moment. Back in May, as you saw on the last slide, we conducted some research with students who engaged with a virtual event, and you can see the positive impact that engaging with virtual is having in their whole student experience. We know student engagement is a big challenge across all of HE, and we really believe that providing easier, more flexible, convenient, less intimidating ways for students to connect with you, with employers, is really a crucial part of driving engagement and ultimately impacting outcomes as well. So really excited to see these pieces come to life. And just to bring these numbers to life on screen, we've already got a sneak preview of these quotes, but wanted to share some of the quotes from the research as well. I'll let you read them. I'm not going to read them out, but I think for those of us or those of you that are in student-facing roles or have been in student-facing roles, when you read these quotes, I think that you can almost picture the faces of some of the students who might have benefited from some of these experiences as well. So yeah, we're just genuinely really excited to see how our virtual kind of investment in virtual continues to support students across the platform. So on the topic of student-facing roles, the main thing in our platform is the student dashboard, the homepage that students come into. David alluded to this. It's had a bit of a redesign and refresh in recent months. It's very much now focused on being action-orientated, connections, pushing students into kind of being active participants in the community, in the platform, and showcasing what they can benefit from being engaged across Handshake. All of our design work involves user research and testing. In this testing actually of this dashboard, this new design saw a 14% increase in the number of students visiting the Career Centre page as well. So we're really excited to see that kind of engagement lift start to come to life this autumn, as this was primarily released obviously in a quieter period over the summer. We're hoping to get like influx of too many students. Let us know if we need to turn it back, but hopefully it's a good thing that more students are coming to your Career Centre page. I certainly think it is. So alongside that kind of drive for students to connect with you and your teams, we also want to make it as easy as possible for students to connect with employers that they meet at virtual fairs. That kind of logging into a virtual fair experience, having a one-to-one or attending a group session with an employer, and then perhaps not following up with that employer, not seeing that employer again. It's a shame that that's kind of an isolated experience. So what we are now doing in product is we will be encouraging students to follow up with employers after a one-to-one, through a little nudge in the platform. And we're also making it easy for them to register for the fair previously and book sessions. So previously you would register for the fair and then you'd be able to book the sessions. Now, once a student books a session, whether it's one-to-one or a group session, they automatically are registered for the fair. So there's not that two-step process. The first process still works, but we're just trying to find ways that make it as easy as possible for students to access your events to make sure that you get the most value out of those. We've also released an update very recently for those of you that have run virtual fairs with us before, and I was certainly in those rooms as well. Running help centres as part of, or help rooms as part of a virtual fair is actually a great way to connect with employers, but in many ways actually just a great way to catch up on emails because not many people come in. And I know a few of you I've spent the day with last year sitting in virtual Zoom rooms waiting for people to turn up, and they never did, and it was a great way to catch up on emails. But we are building into product a automatic way for you to add a link to a help centre for students and employers. So on the left-hand side, you can see of this slide, you can see what the setup will look like. And on the right-hand side, you can see what your view will look like on the day of the fair. So you can instantly go into those help rooms or initiate those help rooms with employers if you want to. And on the next side, you can just see what that experience looks like for students and employers as well. So where those links are showing across the virtual fair experience. So we hope that really helps on that day-to-day kind of management. We know that your teams are the ones that really make these events a success. So we want to make it as easy for you to connect with employers and students, but hopefully you can still spend time catching up on emails as well. I certainly look forward to spending a bit of time doing that in some of those rooms. Next, on to the next update. You can tell we're ploughing through the materials and the updates through this webinar. We're always talking about students, universities and employers at Handshake. And in fact, I should probably clarify that whenever we talk about students, we're also talking about recent graduates as well. We just lump them into that one term. But we also know that alumni connections are hugely important to your service, to your students, and also for the employers that you work with as well. The Handshake network already allows us to surface alumni contacts to you. As new employers come onto the platform, we ask them where they studied, and then we share that contact information with you. I know some of our more recent implementing partners have absolutely loved that feature in the last few weeks. And we currently have a new tool in beta, which is called Alumni Hub, which you can see on the screenshot here, which will launch later in the autumn. Alumni Hub is really about leveraging your alumni networks to unlock opportunities that are unique to your students. In this initial phase, Alumni Hub will aggregate employer contacts who've listed your institution as their alma mater. And from that list, you can then identify contacts that you have not approved yet, perhaps through your employer approvals, or those that you want to monitor, which, who are most active on the platform, and perhaps build a relationship or build them into your programming for your students. And also proactively outreach to them by sending emails from the platform. So nurturing those relationships with them. I will just say that this is really our first step into the sort of alumni waters, as it were. We're really excited about the future iterations of Alumni Hub and building that with you and with our partners across the network. So yeah, for those of you that have been involved in the beta testing, thank you very much for being involved in that beta testing as well. Finally, just a few initiatives to kind of help with students completing their profile, essentially. So the first one on here is about CV passing. We know that students who complete their profile and have a sort of really strong personal brand across the network, engage more across the platform, they do better across the platform. Other students can then learn from those profiles. It's really a win-win all round. So we want to make it as easy as possible for students to do that. Those of you that have already been on the network for a while, you are probably aware that students can upload a CV and it will sort of autofill parts of their profile. We've recently improved that process. So if you haven't done that recently, I would recommend that you do that from your student account. It's a lot more intelligent and intuitive, that process. And we're also now going to build that process into other parts of the platform where students are uploading CVs. So when a student is potentially applying for a job and uploading a CV, we will ask students, it looks like there's some more, more data in this CV. Do you want to add it to your profile? So we're trying to build that behavior of use it where you're updating a CV, you're also updating your profile, because they are essentially one and the same, really. So that we're going to make it as easy as possible for students to do that. We've also we looked at the student homepage earlier, but we've also made that top banner more action orientated. So for those of you that don't already know, I'm sure most of you do, but the Handshake student dashboard or homepage is personalized to every student anyway, using their interest and activity across the platform to create a personalized student experience. What we're doing is using those two boxes at the top, you can see on the screenshot, to also suggest two actions to that student as well. So it might be follow a particular employer, or follow up on a message, that kind of thing. So those two action orientated boxes will start to kind of become more and more utilized in the design over the coming weeks and months. And finally, we are introducing re-onboarding. So for those of you that are familiar with the Handshake onboarding process, when a student comes onto the platform, they are asked about their career interests. What kind of job roles are they interested in? What locations are interesting to them? And we use that data as kind of a baseline to then build on. We share that data back with you within the career service for your reporting and your kind of planning work. But what we're going to be doing going forward is introducing a onboarding process. So any student who has not gone through the onboarding process in the last 6 months will be encouraged to update that information, providing you with the most accurate data set, and also us as well. Should also say that students can obviously, if they don't want to, there's nothing they need to update, they can easily close that and move away from it. But we really believe this is hugely important around keeping that data up to date, both for the Handshake kind of personalization algorithms, but also for you and your service, knowing where your students are today, not just where they were 6 months ago, 3 years ago, is obviously hugely important. So with that run through, I might pause and see if there's questions. I don't know if, David, you've been monitoring them.
We've got a couple questions that have come in. Okay. So I think about kind of a couple different areas. So I think maybe we just kind of get through the rest of these updates and then leave some time at the end.
Sounds good. Back to you then for trust and safety.
Yes. So this is obviously, I think, a hugely important topic for us at Handshake. It's something that we're always thinking about, and I think an area where we're already leading today, but we're always trying to look forward to the future and ask not how can we just be the best, but how can we always be improving in this area? So for just some context, we already have some, I think, industry-leading features around the trust score, around flags, the dedicated Handshake trust and safety team that monitors any kind of activity or kind of fraudulent activity that may be happening on the system. But we are always trying to invest in this and make sure that Handshake truly is the safest place for your students to launch their career. And so the updates that we're talking about now are building on an already incredibly strong foundation to making sure that this is the best place for your students to launch their career. So we are going to be kind of looking at a multi-dimensional set of updates to some key features within the Handshake system, specifically the approval process that universities are going through when they're reviewing content and deciding whether or not it makes sense for their institution. and flagging and the process associated with that. So for those of you that are not current partners, you may not be intimately familiar with how this works in Handshake today. And so in Handshake, universities are able to review and approve employers that have reached out and requested access to your institution. To help inform that process, we have what's called the trust score, which looks at that employer's behavior across the system and kind of decides, or kind of asserts based on that activity, based on a whole set of kind of factors, whether or not we think that that's a trusted employer. Now, universities can then make their own decision associated with that, and they can also flag an employer if they think that employer may be fraudulent. Now, the challenge that we found is that there is not a lot of signal in the flagging reasons or the decline reasons. So for example, a university may decline an employer because it doesn't meet their guidelines or their standards. That doesn't necessarily mean that that employer is not trustworthy or fraudulent. It just means that they're not going to fit for their institution. And likewise, on the flagging, we saw some universities that would actually flag an employer for something that wasn't necessarily related to fraud. And so as we look towards the future, we're really trying to bring signal and clarity in this to help inform universities and to help the relevance engine, to help all these different aspects really understand what's going on here. So coming this autumn, this is actually just launched, we are going to be introducing an updated flag taxonomy. So essentially what this means is that if you as a university find an employer that you think is fraudulent or that you think may have harmful conduct or illegal practices, that's going to be something that you can actually indicate when you flag that employer. Not only can universities, career services flag employers, but students can also flag an employer if the employer maybe sent a message that they think was inappropriate, or maybe they think they're representing themselves in an inappropriate way. They can flag that employer, provide some details using this new taxonomy that helps our trust and safety team take action, but also helps inform universities who may have approved that employer. So by introducing this additional signal, we're able to then share more context with the university to help inform other universities' decision-making around whether or not they want to continue to work with that employer based on the content of the flag. Now, one of the, we think that between the increased taxonomy and the better signal and notification process here, it's really going to help the flagging process catch the rare instances of fraudulent employers across the Handshake network. One of the other things that we're doing is we're updating the decline reasons. So historically, universities have been able to decline an employer, and that actually factored into the employer's trust score. We looked at the ratio of how many universities would approve and decline that employer as one of the signals on whether or not that employer was likely to be trustworthy. But unfortunately, what that meant was that if an employer maybe just wasn't a good fit for a particular type of university that they were reaching out to, it could artificially hit their trust score and actually create a bit of a death spiral, if you will, and in that employer then would have a bad trust score that we get approved as much, and it can be really challenging to start to remedy that. And so in order to address that and to make sure that we're factoring in whether or not it's really a trust issue or if it's a fit issue, we're adding a new list of decline reasons that when a university maybe declines a particular job posting, we ask you to just share, are you declining that because it's not a good fit, because of moral ethical reasons, because of legal reasons? And that will help ensure that we are factoring that in across the network in a way that is true to the actual rationale behind that decline. So the updates here, I think, are really going to help continue to level up Handshake's trust score to help really think about the kind of trust and safety. But this is really a part of a kind of multi-phase process. One of the things that we're looking to do in 2022 is actually bring in on the Handshake trust and safety team an additional employer validation process. And today it can be a little convoluted, if we're being honest. If you're an employer, you maybe don't understand how the trust score works. You get a couple of universities that don't know you, so they decline you. All of a sudden, you're kind of in trust score purgatory to some cases, where you actually don't really know how to improve it. Universities aren't necessarily approving you. And so we want to actually bring in a validation process and a new remedy process that helps every employer have, that is a legitimate employer, have that presence on the network, that has good profile information, that can kind of proactively answer the questions that you as a university want to know in order to make a decision on whether or not it's a good fit for your institution. And so these three things, updating our flag taxonomy, updating our decline reasons, and in 2022, introducing this new employer validation process and appeals process for flags, we think is really going to continue to invest in this foundation of trust and safety within the Handshake network. So keep an eye out for more updates here. Again, this is a really important topic. You'll see that the kind of details associated with that coming out as partners. You'll get email updates on kind of how these changes are going to impact you. We don't expect this to be a massive change in workflow, but it's going to be kind of an additional tick box that you can just use to increase the information available, and in doing so, help increase the trust and safety across the entirety of the Handshake network. The last update that we're making is we're updating the in progress tab so that you can actually manage employer approvals in a more efficient way. So you can actually indicate what's happening and communicate to employers. We know today that employers sometimes aren't necessarily certain what the process is. Why are they waiting so long for review or approval? The recommendation still is kind of a best practice of using the trust score to auto approve employers. That's by far the most efficient way to use the team's time. Say, for example, setting a threshold of 80 or 85% auto approving employers based on that, and then manually reviewing those that are less than 80, 85%. But if you are doing a manual review process, you can use this in progress section to communicate with employers and indicate that you are reviewing this, you're working on it, but that it's taking a little bit more time than it may normally take. So again, these updates all come together to continue to build on a very strong foundation to make Handshake the absolute safest place for your students to launch their career. So we're really excited about these updates. They can feel a little transactional sometimes and a little boring, but I think when you think about what this actually means and preventing students from falling victim to scams, from preventing your team from spending hours and hours and hours playing detective to try and determine whether or not an employer is legitimate or not, we think that these changes are really going to make a big impact. So I'm very excited about that. And I'm going to turn it back over to Claire to run through just a couple other updates before we work through some of these questions.
Yeah, so as David alluded to at the beginning of the presentation, the product is always evolving. And we've got some other updates that we wanted to share with you that we thought were relevant to highlight as we go back into the start of this academic year, just to wrap up, and then we'll go into questions. So first things first, I know this is a big one for many people across our early partners group and also prospects as well, I'm sure. Later this year, we plan to allow students to enter an alternative personal email address, and then students will be able to choose where they receive email notifications from Handshake. Will it go to their university email account or their personal email account? So we're putting that student choice right at the heart of that. Many partners are particularly excited about this update, and it will serve as an excellent way to collect personal emails, allow students to more easily convert to their alumni accounts at that kind of period of graduation, and also a fantastic way for you to stay in contact with students once they've graduated. So please do keep an eye out on the partner newsletters if you want to for more information on that. We will potentially be looking for beta testers in the UK as well, so keep a close eye on the newsletter for that. I've already spoken to a few people about it who I know are keen to be in that group, so please do keep an eye out on the newsletter for more information. We're very excited about this one coming into product. Again, probably not the most exciting feature when you think about it, but the implications that it has and the improvement it has to the whole experience on all sides is really important. So very excited about that one. On to the next slide, please, David. So this one I think is particularly exciting as well. Last autumn, many of you who were partners at the time will remember that we did some research to devise the most transparent and thoughtful way to let students self-report their gender and their pronouns in product. As this was like a pretty frequent ask from students. But we knew it was an important one to really get right. So along that sort of theme, earlier this year, we kicked off some research projects to determine the most thoughtful way to allow students to self-report their race and ethnicity too. So similar to self-reported gender, we plan to allow premium employers who are focused on kind of DEI initiatives to use this data to send campaigns. The data will be aggregated, anonymous, and allows those employers to connect with students. And obviously it's up to students whether they opt into that and how they identify. So it's completely student choice. For now, students can self-report race and ethnicity on the iOS app, and Android will be coming soon, as will the web browsers. And it is very, very important to note, so I'm going to pause, that this data is entirely separate from the data you import as a university partner. If you are a partner, it's a completely separate piece of data, and is used in an entirely different way, and the one does not overwrite the other. So really important to sort of highlight that. We really, we know that for many employers, whether it's gender imbalances or ethnicity imbalances or underrepresented groups in particular industries, really care about this. And we need to find a way, a sensitive and thoughtful way and transparent way to give employers the tools to do something about these things. So we're really excited to see this come to life and for it to be driven by students themselves, to be honest. That's probably the most important thing, we think. So that's a pretty big one that's coming. Wanted to highlight a few dashboards in the platform that we've launched very recently that I think will be particularly interesting as we go into the next academic year, that hopefully your team can use, you can share with other teams as well within your organisation. So the first focuses on student equity. So it will help you to identify how students are engaging across Handshake by gender, race and ethnicity, and that is using the data that you have imported. So that's a separate piece from what we were talking about earlier. We really hope that that helps you and your teams identify where there are gaps in provision and where perhaps efforts need to be focused to provide more equitable outcomes. The next dashboard focuses on virtual engagement. It will help you to track how your team is facilitating those student to employer connections through virtual career events, virtual fairs. So really excited to see you utilise that one as we kind of work out as a sector how to manage virtual and in person through that hybrid time. We thought it was worthwhile pulling those out that allows you to kind of compare in person and virtual. So that's there for you now. And finally, the last dashboard specifically focuses on employer relations. The dashboard is all about helping you identify student interest trends and maps and the types of employers you could or might want to add to your network on Handshake. We've heard a lot of that from partners in the last couple of months. It's like the importance of employer relations and those kind of management of accounts. So we want to make data easily accessible for your employer engagement teams to be able to be proactive in those approaches. To access any of these dashboards, just go into the Handshake homepage, go to analytics, and you will see them there on the dashboards page. Should also highlight, if you want to schedule those dashboards to be sent to you every Friday at 9 a.m. or every day at 10 a.m., whatever frequency you're looking for, you can do that. You can also schedule them to go via an SFTP process or an Amazon A3 bucket if you want them to go to an external system. We recognize that this data is important and therefore might need to go into business analytics information systems internally. So if you want to do that, you can do that through scheduled dashboards as well. So we hope those are useful to you in the coming academic year. And by some miracle, David, we've got 10 minutes for questions.
It's like we planned it perfectly.
We always overrun, so this is fantastic. We've got time for questions. Any jump out at you that we think?
Yeah, we've got a couple here that I can kick us off with around kind of virtual appointments. Okay. So there was a question around the kind of basically mobile support for virtual appointments, and kind of I was wondering, is there kind of a gap between iOS, Android, and the desktop version such that universities would have to kind of balance the two, right? To like another system to support mobile. So the exciting news is that actually virtual appointments are live today on iOS. So students who have iOS can actually connect on the mobile app. It's in development right now for Android, so we don't have a specific date that's going to launch, but we do expect that kind of later this autumn we'll have full native support for virtual appointments on any of the kind of major mobile platforms. So that is, we think, going to be pretty exciting. The other one around kind of virtual appointments, there are a couple folks that had mentioned like this idea of blurring the background and kind of where that's at. So just to kind of speak to that, we certainly understand that this is a important topic when it comes to making students feel comfortable and engaging. It's also like we kind of take it for granted because it's built into so many platforms right now. But basically, the kind of technology that actually goes into supporting a good background blur is non-trivial, and doing that in a way that is performant, such that students who maybe don't have a super high bandwidth connection or a fast processor can also take advantage of those types of things, makes the kind of technical challenge even more complex. So our team's working on it. We're working with our video provider to try and figure out how we can actually start to natively bring that in. We do have some other kind of solutions where you can use different plugins, and there's teams of people who this is their entire focus, is just being able to do different video effects. We do hope eventually to build this into Handshake, but it's something that, in order to get right, it's going to take a bit of time. So in the short term, we do know obviously students can choose whether or not they want to have their camera on. That's something that we see is quite it's quite common. If a student is uncomfortable around that, they can just flip their camera off. You can connect with audio via the Handshake appointments offering. There's also going to be the kind of chat option there as well. So that's kind of where that's at and how we're thinking about it.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to know what those plugins are, I've already shared them with a couple of partners. If you want to put them in resources for students who are particularly concerned about blurring backgrounds, feel free to reach out to Emily or myself, and we can share those with you. I know a couple of people have already tested them, and they work quite well, actually, in combination with the Handshake video. So please do reach out, and we'll happily share those with you. Let's see what else is in here. Gary, any plans to bring the video technology to individual careers, webinars, and workshops? As far as I know, David, unless you know, David, there isn't at the moment. It's definitely something we have thought about, but given that universities already quite often have Teams licenses, Zoom licenses that they use, and because the event frequently is lower than appointments, we have prioritized appointments and that one-to-one connection first, and we've made it really easy for when you're hosting career service events for you to plug in video links. It's also, as David kind of alluded to, like video sort of software is hugely complex, as we've all seen. It took Zoom about 6 months, I think, to figure out how to do a blurred background. But and they're technology firms who are entirely focused on things like this, webinars, group sessions, breakout rooms, all of those kinds of things. And that functionality is so useful for so many of our university partners, and we recognise that they may want to lean into that more, especially in group events. So therefore, we kind of, there's an expert group of providers in that space, and we happily will work to make sure that the product works with them in the best way possible. But we are currently not prioritizing building that, because we think we can add value in lots of other places that perhaps that kind of that tools don't exist, like the virtual info chats. There's no way at the moment for students and employers to connect in that kind of easy in-app kind of video connection piece. That's a real value add, whereas we think that Teams and Zoom have got the kind of webinar breakout rooms bit covered when it comes to big events, so we'll happily just support that in-app at the moment, I think. David, unless I'm wrong. And
I think that's spot on. So today, the ease of being able to connect in small groups or one-on-one, like that Handshake can create, is a really unique experience. If you think about, just to build on the example that Claire was sharing, like how many links would have to be shared for an employer to be able to create 15 different one-on-one kind of 10-minute coffee chats, like the logistics of that just become untenable. The converse of that is if you have a 90-minute workshop, like sharing one Zoom link, like today in Handshake, you can add a virtual link, click on that, automatically be brought there, and it really uses that kind of specialty. So I think that's where we've really focused in and where we think we can drive the unique value. And I think that the other reality is like the kind of current video experience is capped at 50 people. And so it doesn't actually make sense to try and bring that to these events. Now that said, that is a cap that our engineering team is also starting to look at and kind of understand with some of the underlying providers if that's something that we could extend. And if we're able to figure that out in the long term, then it may be something that we can actually start to bring to events and things like that. But for now, there's kind of no immediate plans to do that. We've actually seen that the kind of seamless handoff between Handshake and these other providers that's already built into the system has worked pretty well. And I think the last question that we've got, and we're going to, I think, be just about perfect on time, is that can employers, and this is I think in regards to the info chats, but we'll kind of broaden it, can employers choose to chat with any student regardless of the interest that student may or may not have shown, or can only students initiate a chat? So this depends a little bit on the specific experience that you're talking about. With messages, employers are able to initiate a chat with a student in accordance with that student's privacy preferences. So if a student said they want to have their profile visible, employers can actually proactively, they can find that student, they can message them. Obviously, it's up to that student if they want to take any action based on that message, but they're able to initiate that as well. When it comes to actually like booking meetings and actually responding, taking action, whether that's attending an event, booking an info chat, applying to a vacancy, the student has to initiate that action. So the only action that an employer can initiate right now is a message. That message may be inviting the student to that thing, but that is kind of the scope of what there. So it really requires kind of a two-way interaction for those things to actually come to fruition. The longer term, we are looking at different ways that students can actually start to indicate. We actually already have pretty good mechanisms for students to be able to indicate interest, and we've surfaced a lot of that for the employers via candidate hubs. If a student follows an employer, employers can actually start to see the students that have followed them and reach out directly, again, in accordance with their privacy preferences. One of the other things that we're looking at are the mechanisms for students to indicate disinterest, which is actually a little bit more nuanced. So that if they do get a message they're not interested, how do we actually flag that, automatically kind of exclude students and make it so employers can't message that student? That's an area that we're continuing to look through. It hasn't been a major issue actually across the network, but it's something that as we continue to try and like increase signal across the network is something that we're looking at.
And I think that's it, isn't it? We haven't got any other questions, I don't believe.
I think that may be the best timed webinar that we've ever had.
Well done. We didn't go off on tangents too much. So with that, I think we'll say have a lovely Tuesday, everybody. Enjoy the sun. I'm going to go and stand outside for a little bit because it's absolutely boiling in this room. But I hope you all have a fabulous Tuesday, and we look forward to speaking to you all soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.